everybody, Dragon Movie Guy here. Welcome back to the Dragon Movie Guy podcast. Today is going to be a little bit of an experiment. I'm going to try talking about some news headlines from this past week for the week of May 19th, 2023. Figured this would just be an experiment to see how you guys like it, see how this all fits together, doing the topic du jour, topic du the week. Joining me in this experimental podcast in the news you can use, I don't know if that title will stick or not, but joining me for this news you can use episode of Dragon Movie Guy podcast is a friend of the channel. He is the man behind Pierce Productions, the YouTube channel, the TikTok channel, if you were. It is Trace Pierce of Pierce Productions. Trace, welcome back to Dragon Movie Guy. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored that I got a second return to the Dragon Movie Guy podcast, YouTube channel. It's such an honor, and I just love talking movies with you. Like, it's just what more to pass the time for an hour and a half? I mean, there's no better way. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. It's fun to be able to talk about our favorite pastimes and the things that entertain us, especially as we're entering summer movie season now and all of the things that are going on in Hollywood and everything in the entertainment industry. The first topic, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. It is week number 2, and it was number 1 at the box office for the second week in a row. It made $60.5 million, combining for a total of over $500 million in the first 2 weeks. And surprisingly, it only had a 49% drop-off in week 2. Most big blockbusters nowadays try and saturate theaters as much as possible, and then for whatever reason the public tends to drop off on the box office at a relatively predictable rate. Usually it's 55-60%, but Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 had a 49% drop, which is a lot better than most films. So what are your thoughts on this box office figure for Guardians of the Galaxy? Does it surprise you? And have you seen Guardians of the Galaxy already?
I have seen Guardians of the Galaxy, yes. Great movie, fantastic trilogy. I'm sad, but I'm also happy. I'm sad that we're not going to be getting any more James Gunn movies in Marvel, but we're going to be getting them in DC, so that makes me happy. So as far as the box office goes, I don't understand how people are saying that this was a failure. I mean, it opened north of $100 million, which a lot of movies would kill to have. John Wick 4, in comparison, a month earlier, granted it doesn't have the same budget of Guardians 3, but I mean, the more and more those John Wick movies go on, the budget keeps rising because the stakes got to be higher. Anyway, I'm using that comparison because John Wick 4 had the biggest opening of it was between 60 and $68 million, but everyone called it such a success. And then when Guardians opens to double that at almost 120 million, I think it opened to 117, if I'm not mistaken, domestically.
I believe so,
Somehow that was a failure, and with a 49% drop, movies would kill to have a 49% drop. I mean, usually you're looking in the 60% range, like you just said, because everyone goes to see it the first weekend. But what they need is for people, 1, to spread the word of mouth, and then 2, to come back and watch it twice, watch it 3 times, and to tell their friends, hey, maybe you didn't like Ant-Man and Thor, but you know what? This Guardians one, I think you should check this one out. And I just think that for people to paint this number as a bad number is silly. It's an extraordinary number. It's a good box office. It's a little bit shy of 600 million right now, but we're in the second week. This thing's going to go on for another probably 4 or 5 weeks.
It is worth pointing out that the budget for this film was $250-ish million, which is higher than the previous 2 Guardians of the Galaxy movies, so the more you spend, the more you gotta make. But
it's also true.
James Gunn has a really good track history with box office numbers, and anytime the MCU comes along, I think as we saw last weekend, nothing major came out trying to not get steamrolled by the MCU. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this upcoming weekend. How many times have you seen Guardians so far, and are you recommending it to people to watch in theaters? Is it worth their money?
So, as of now, I've seen it once. I do want to see it again before it leaves theaters, and I am telling people that they should check this one out. The people that these movies need to come to the theater are the people that are not you and me. You and me, we go to almost every movie. We're going to see it regardless. But what they need is they need people like my mom to go to these movies, because those are the people that are the quote unquote average movie fan. Me and you are above average. So I told people like my mom, I said, hey, like, she loves the Guardians movies, and I told her this one was good. So it's like, it's people like that, the word of mouth like that is what gets these movies higher and higher in the box office. And while I don't see this thing making more than Guardians 2, which made 886 million, I believe, I could be wrong, but it made north of 800 million. I do see this coming in more along the lines of 750, which is a success in my eyes.
Absolutely. Anytime a movie can make that much money, it's a win in my book. And especially when you figure if the budget was roughly 250 million, the general rule of thumb is you have to make twice that in order to break even. So if it does come in at 750 million-ish, that should be considered a financial success.
And the reviews were positive.
Yeah.
So it's not like this thing got panned.
I do think that the commercials that were saying that this is the best Marvel movie since Endgame is a little inaccurate. I thought it's a really good film, but just in my personal opinion, I think that Spider-Man No Way Home was a better film in terms of being the best movie since Endgame. What do you think? Is this the best Marvel movie since Endgame?
It's pretty close to Spider-Man. I love the Guardians, but I think I'm more of a fan of Spider-Man in general. So I'm going to give the edge to Spider-Man, No Way Home. But in terms of best superhero movie since Endgame, that is going to The Flash. But
True.
We're talking about Marvel, so I'm going to say No Way Home. But in terms of just in general superhero movies since Endgame, I'm excited for people to see The Flash.
I am too, and I also think The Flash is better than Guardians 3, but they're both really good films. So definitely
both really good.
Yeah, definitely both worth watching in theaters. Kind of moving on to our second topic, somewhat related, Fast and the Furious 10, which is the 11th movie in the series. I can't believe there's this many Fast and Furious movies. The predictions that Deadline is making is that Fast and Furious 10 will make $300 million opening weekend, with roughly 65 of that coming here in the States and 200 and some odd million worldwide. Do you think Fast and Furious 10 Fast X will do that well at the box office?
I have a lot of numbers here that I have set aside in preparation for this. So first off, if the movie opens to a weekend of over 300 million worldwide, that's excellent. That's almost as much as Black Adam made. That's more than Shazam made. That's just a success for something that's in the 11th movie in the franchise.
Yeah.
Come on, like that's insane. But let's look at these numbers here. They're saying it's going to open to 60 to 65 million dollars worldwide. And some people are saying, oh, Fast and Furious has run out of gas, because F9 opened to $70 million, F8 opened to $97 million, Furious 7 in 2015 opened to $147 million, which is the highest in the franchise, and Fast and Furious 6 opened to $97 million. So, if I did my math correctly, there is a downward trajectory, but all of these movies have made over $700 million, one of which opened during the pandemic, still made over $700 million, and two of these movies crossing the $1 billion mark. If anyone is saying that $60 million is worrisome, let's go back and look at Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw in 2019 with arguably the biggest movie star in the world. Do you want to take a guess what that movie opened up to?
80 million?
And do you want to take a guess on how much it made worldwide?
Ooh, it's usually times 2 for the worldwide gross. So I would say 80 domestically, 160 internationally for 240.
Hobbs and Shaw opened to $60 million, which is on par with what Fast and Furious 10 is said to be opening to. The movie went on to make $760 million worldwide. It doesn't need to open to $200 million to make its budget back and then some. This movie can open to $60 million and still be a success. And I think we're just living in an age right now where if a movie doesn't make $150 million in the first weekend, people think that there's something wrong. This is the 11th movie in the franchise. The reviews for the last one were not good. Let's just call it as it is. F9 was a bad movie.
They put the F in
I
F9.
think that, yeah, so I think that is also another reason why maybe we're seeing a $60 million opening. If F9 was really good, maybe like Furious 7 was, maybe then we're looking at a $95 to $100 million opening.
We also have to keep in mind that Furious 7 was the last one with Paul Walker, and everyone knew going into that film's release that obviously Paul Walker had died. Well, what is that movie going to be like? Factor, I think that was boosting the box office to a certain extent in a sort of weirdly, oddly morbid way. And then Fast 8 coming out. What is the first movie without Paul Walker going to be like? What are they going to do with his character in terms of running him off? The last 2 films, though, Hobbs and Shaw and Fast 9, they're children of the pandemic to a certain extent. So it will be really interesting to see how people react to Fast 10. Is it going to be a diminished law of diminishing returns sort of factor, especially when people know it's going to be coming to an end, but not coming to an end yet? And yet, it's gone from being a 2-movie ending to now being a trilogy ending.
Trilogy.
So,
but
it's really impossible to really tell with Fast and Furious until it actually hits theaters and the rubber meets the road.
I really didn't like F9. I really didn't like it. But I'm still interested in the franchise. I'm really interested in Jason Momoa's character. The way that they've shown him in the trailers, I can't be the only one that's like, man, he looks like a fun villain. I think they're doing that on purpose. I think that they had a really good character written for Jason Momoa, and they're really letting that shine in the trailers. He's all over the trailers. Furious 8, first one that had Cypher with Charlize Theron. While she was in the trailers, they did not show what type of villain she was to the extent that they are with Jason Momoa, because I think they know that they have a good character of Jason Momoa in this movie. It's
sort of one of those interesting things too, how do you replace Paul Walker as the lead, as a lead character in a film like Fast and Furious? And instead of replacing with another pretty boy, they've gone with the beefcake, similar type to Vin Diesel, with John Cena, and with Jason Momoa, the big burly men of few words and testosterone and punching and fighting.
Even Jason Statham, he doesn't look like The Rock, but Jason Statham can throw down as well.
Yeah, but he's got the British accent, so that accounts for at least 30 pounds of muscle all in the upper body. Interesting point too. You bring up Charlize Theron, Oscar-winning actress, one of my favorite actresses. I was not a huge fan of her character in Fast 8. I don't know what I was expecting, and her character didn't pull me over either. Seeing her in the trailers for this one, I'm like, really? They're bringing back Charlize Theron?
She was in number 9 too. I don't really know what they're trying to do with this character.
Yeah, I mean,
it seems like they're kind of just dragging it out.
Putting more and more celebrities onto an ever-increasing size bus of celebrities that's fueled by NOS.
You were talking about Guardians' budget being $250, but I'm pretty sure this one's over $300.
I think it's just because Guardians has so much CGI in it, and obviously Fast and Furious has some as well, but I don't think to nearly the same extent the budget for the CGI in Fast and Furious as big as Guardians of the Galaxy.
I think that the reason why we're seeing a $300 million price tag to make this movie is because they're adding so many stars, and each person wants a piece of the pie. Box office points, or maybe Brie Larson's like, okay, I'll come in for 2 weeks, but I want $11 million. It's stuff like that.
I don't think any of the celebrities showing up for a Fast and Furious movie are saying, well, I'm going to cut my rates because I think this is going to win the Cannes Film Festival. the Palme d'Or.
No, they're getting paid.
Yeah,
They're definitely, and Vin Diesel's getting paid.
yeah.
He's also a producer, so he's making money on that too.
Absolutely. As they should be. If you're recommending to people what to watch this weekend, what would you suggest? Fast and Furious 10 or Guardians 3?
It's tough to say because I haven't seen Fast and Furious, but I'm going to just go ahead and go with Fast and Furious only because Guardians is now going on its third week. So at this point, I can't recommend it over a new movie that looks like it could be fun.
I'm the same way. Unless someone is looking for a different style of film, comes down to 2 action films, I would be recommending Fast and Furious, which I have not seen as well, but I did love Guardians, but newer is always better in some respects. So both you and I think are on the list for Fast X this weekend. I love the Fast X thing. The P90X of it all. You're based in LA. The writers, a lot of the Hollywood writers are based in LA. There's 11,000 Writers Guild of America writers on strike, largely in New York, LA, and Atlanta. Have you seen any striking writers around LA? I mean, 11,000 sounds like a lot, but when you divide them up into 3 different cities, I grew up in Seattle, so I'm used to 30 or 40,000 Boeing workers going on strike. Those picket lines are impossible to miss. Have you seen any writers around LA? I mean, are they picketing Starbucks in between screenplay breaks?
No, they're not picketing. I'm not seeing anybody outside Starbucks or anything like that. But I am maybe 10 or 15 minutes from some of the studios such as Universal and Paramount and stuff like that. And if you drive by there, you're going to see them all over the place picketing, which it's their right to do so. And that's where you'll see them. The more that you go closer to the studios, they're right out front of it. I don't see this going on as long as the 2008 writer's strike. That one went on for 3 months. Now, unfortunately, we're in week 3 of this. I don't see this going on past week 5. I think that everyone's going to come to their senses and say, you know what? These writers actually do deserve to make a fair amount. And maybe they do deserve health care. Like, I think that everyone's going to come to their senses sooner rather than later. I don't see this dragging on for a couple more months. I really hope that I'm correct here, because that would completely suck if this goes on for 3 months again, like in 2008 or even longer.
Do you think the writers will get a good chunk of their demands? Like, do you think that mini rooms will go away, and instead of being paid by episode, they will find new statistics or ways to handle revenue sharing? Because obviously, if you're paid by the episode and there aren't as many episodes, there are no residuals when everything is streaming.
There's also the concept that you left out of AI, which there also is part of their demands of not wanting studios to screw over writers by saying, "Oh, it was written by AI." You know that they would absolutely do if these writers and the WGA was not fighting against it. You know 100% that these studios would say, well, let's save a buck and say AI did it. But I don't think that they're going to settle. I think that if they were going to settle, it would have already been over with. But I think that they know what they deserve and they know their worth. They're going to get it. So they're not going to sit here and get screwed by these studios anymore. These heads of the studios need to, I don't think they're getting it, that this WGA is not just going to sit there and take it anymore. Unlike Netflix, which, this is odd to say, but they have too much content. It's a little overwhelming. I think that like stuff like Max, I don't even like calling it Max, HBO Max, I think that they're kind of trimming the fat a little bit, because while it is on their own service, which they own, sometimes they do have to pay these certain licenses to keep stuff on there. So why should they keep paying licensing fees and back-end fees or whatever for these shows that no one theoretically is watching, in comparison to stuff like The Last of Us, where maybe they can sell it to a smaller streamer, maybe like Crackle or Tubi or Roku, make some money and just kind of get rid of it, and then they have more space to be able to include these big budgeted shows and market them correctly like stuff like Last of Us or House of the Dragon, like stuff like that.
If it is costing HBO Max X dollars to have a program or a film just sitting there, then clearly the money is going somewhere to the producers or to whoever owns the film. So why not give the writers a share? They obviously wrote the darn thing in the first place. So culling of the herd to a certain extent. I think the writers should get their piece of the pie. How much longer do you think the writer's strike goes on?
I'm gonna say everything gets cleared up within 3 weeks. And even then, that would bring it to like a month and a half, which is half the length as the one in 2008.
This week, the WGA has been setting up picket lines outside of the upfronts for several different companies, including NBC Universal. Hopefully these work stoppages get resolved, and we get our entertainment back. We get the writers paid, and we get the entertainment back on the screens, big and small.
Everyone's happy.
Yes, we get everything streaming, and honestly, too, let the writers get a piece of the streaming pie. Rust, which was Alec Baldwin's movie, where the cinematographer was accidentally shot and killed a year and a half ago, has wrapped production, has finished up production. They started up a month ago, and they have now wrapped on Rust 19 months, roughly, after the shooting that killed the cinematographer. Should this be a film that was finished, and should this film be released? Would you go see this film if it's released in theaters or streaming?
Let's start with, should this movie have continued? Yes, Matthew Hutchins, which is the widow of Kalana, who died in October of 2021. He has settled a wrongful death lawsuit with Baldwin, and he's serving as a executive producer on the film. So with the widower behind the film now, I'm going to say yes, that it is okay that they continued. I don't want to say that he gave his blessing, nothing like that, but he at least is able to make sure that his wife's vision is able to continue with the film, and there's probably going to be a memoriam. If he wasn't involved with the afterwards process, then it would just, to me, feel a little icky. Alec Baldwin in it, and Jensen Ackles in it from Supernatural. I don't see this movie getting a theatrical release, to be honest, and if it does, it's going to be very, very, very limited. I see this as more of a, they're going to sell it to Netflix type deal or something like Netflix. I don't think that they want to be doing press for this movie, because all anyone's going to be talking about is what happened in October or what happened with the court, and without press, if you put it in the theaters, I don't see it doing very well. Would I watch it? It really depends on the trailer, and I read a summary of it which sounded kind of interesting, but I'm just not really a fan of westerns, to be honest. The trailer really has to sell me.
I am not a huge western fan in terms of genre. Pretend Yuma is a great film. Tombstone, great film. If this is one that can be set up in memoriam, or scholarship funds can be set up, that sort of thing, where in any way her family gets some financial assistance, I am definitely all for that. Because this is not a 4-quadrant movie. It sounds like this is a small independent movie. Give people something to watch on a down week somewhere. I can't imagine that they would have a big Grauman's Chinese Theater red carpet with limousines pulling up left and right and people in tuxedos for a big, giant red carpet. An interesting development in the streaming world of Disney Plus. We are going to be getting a Marvel Cinematic Universe streaming show released the entire season on Disney Plus at the same time, in the same way that Netflix normally does. And Disney Plus has not done this before as of yet. So this will be a first. We're going to be getting Echo, which is a character that I had never heard of before I read this article. But this is a character that appeared on Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye streaming series. And it is featuring a hearing-impaired Native American characters. They're going to be doing a little bit of experiment to see how this performs. What are your thoughts on Netflix-style dump and binge the entire season in one sitting?
I don't think this is an experiment at all. I think that they're trying to make something negative sound like a positive. I think the show is just really bad, and they're like, oh man, let's just dump it all on the same day, and then we get a weekend of negative reviews, and then we don't have to worry about it again. Because if it's a 7 or 8 episode season, every single week people are going to be talking about how bad this show is, or maybe one week they have a good episode. But I think overall, I don't think it's a good show, and they realize that. There's also production delays a couple months back, and this is a character that not a lot of people know. She was introduced in Hawkeye, which, one, that wasn't a really good season as well. Hawkeye kind of let me down. And Echo wasn't even the standout character in that series. If anything, they should have done a Hawkeye season 2, but with Kate Bishop's character. This just isn't a character that's very popular. This isn't a character that had any standout scenes in the Hawkeye series. The Hawkeye series was mediocre. It was just very, very odd that they even did this. And the only reason that I think they did do this is maybe they thought going into Hawkeye that this would be the standout character, which it didn't turn out to be. And then we have Daredevil Born Again coming out next year, and Echo and Daredevil and Kingpin all share a connection in that world. So I think that maybe this is just going to be like an epilogue for Daredevil. As far as it being experimental, that's complete BS, because they would have done that with Secret Invasion if it was experimental. They would have done that with Loki, which is coming out on October 6th, if it was experimental. Why are you waiting until November to try and experiment? Secret Invasion comes out next month. Do it next month. It's not up to par with what it should be.
Now, what were your thoughts on the character of Echo when you saw her?
Some characters are meant to be side characters. Honestly, no, it's a good side character, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a good lead. Look at The Hangover. Yeah. Zach Galifianakis' character, Alan, he's an excellent side character. I do not want to see a full Hangover spinoff of Alan. He's not a lead character. He's a side character.
That's a great example. Could you imagine Zach Galifianakis in his own streaming series, surrounded by
Hangover, people? Alan gets lost, or something like that. I don't know.
And somehow Alan is surrounded by people who are even crazier than Alan is. He would be outshined in his own crazy spin-off streaming series.
Echo going to make you sign up for Disney Plus?
Well, no. I've been planning to sign up for Disney Plus for a while now, and I just, between HBO Max and Netflix, and obviously all the new releases that are coming out, I just haven't gotten around to signing up to a point where I would sit down to watch all of the Star Wars and Marvel series that are on Disney Plus that are in the backlog that I really do need to watch at some point. But given all of the controversy that was surrounding She-Hulk and the seemingly self-admitted by Disney after the fact lack of quality control on some of the streaming shows, that doesn't give me confidence in the quality of Echo moving forward, especially when I haven't heard of this character before, and having not seen Hawkeye yet. And I like Hawkeye. I do like Hawkeye. I like original characters, so the fact that they were doing a Christmas time series on Hawkeye, I love the idea of it, but before they announced this series was coming out, I had never even heard of this character before and hadn't known that she was going to be getting her own series. So, entire season being released at once in one Netflix-like blow to the solar plexus of viewing habits, it's not motivating me to sign up for Disney Plus any more than I was before. So, I think if they had confidence in this series, they would do more of their traditional release method. 1 or 2 or 3 episodes as premiere, and then 1 episode per week after that, just to try and milk the viewers into signing up or staying around longer.
It's also a word of mouth thing when you do something week by week. Look at The Last of Us. If you pulled up the numbers for The Last of Us, every week the numbers went up because people watched it, and then they told people to watch it, and then they told people to watch it. And that's why at the end of the series, you saw an amount that was nearly double what it started with viewership. I mean, I was telling my mom about The Last of Us. I was telling everyone. I was like, you got to watch this. And if you just drop everything on one day, if I tell someone, hey, go watch Echo, and then they click on it and they see it's 8 episodes, an hour long each, they're going to be like, well, I'm 8 episodes behind. Like, it's such a commitment. Like, but if it's week by week, then it's a routine that they can start to get into. Okay, every Wednesday, I'm gonna make dinner, and by the time dinner's ready, it will be the new episode of Echo, and it becomes almost like a routine for 7 or 8 weeks.
It'll be appointment television and not just bingeable content that you're gonna avoid sleep for one night just to finish out the series order. We've been seeing, especially with like Succession coming to an end, and all of these high profile streaming series on other streaming services that are getting a lot of positive publicity, that are getting a lot of people that are watching them and watching each week. So this is not a good look for Echo. I do hear that Loki season 1 is really good, so Loki season 2 coming out in October might be a good fall watch. And
WandaVision's the best thing that Disney Plus has put out in terms of like Marvel. And then honestly, probably Loki season 1 is the second best.
And for those Elizabeth Olsen lovers, Love and Blood on HBO Max is actually pretty good. And there's 1 episode left of that. It was just a 5-episode series. So 5 episodes so far, 6 episodes total, 1 left to go. So if anyone is getting what has an Elizabeth Olsen fixation and they have to meet that need, Love and Blood is actually absolutely worth watching. Very suburban, very 80s, but all Elizabeth Olsen all the time. What can people look forward to watching on Pierce Productions?
For Pierce Productions, while I do love doing stuff like this, I'm on a little bit of hiatus on my own channel. But I absolutely love going on my friends' channels and hanging out and doing exactly what I did today with you. But as far as my own content, I'm on a little bit of a hiatus right now.
What are you planning to be watching in the next week or 2 in theaters as it comes out?
Excellent. Also follow up. So definitely F9 is going to be coming out. So that's something that this weekend I'm checking out. Evil Dead is my favorite all-time franchise, so I need to go see Evil Dead Rise one more time before it leaves theaters. And then finally, Always Sunny in Philadelphia is one of my favorite movies. Actually, I got 2 finals. Always Sunny in Philadelphia is one of my favorite TV shows ever. And Charlie Day wrote and directed his own movie called Fool's Paradise. So I'm going to be wanting to check that out. It also co-stars Ray Liotta in one of his final roles. So I need to check that out. And then tonight at 7:15, I already have my ticket, the Blackberry movie I'm also going to be checking out, which has Always Sunny star alumni Glenn Howerton. And it is about the production of the Blackberry. So I think last time me and you did a live stream, we were talking about Air, the Michael Jordan movie, and The Founder with Michael Keaton, about how these stories of, well, how did this brand or company become what it was? So I'm going to be checking out one of those movies tonight and figure out a little history about Blackberry.
Absolutely, and Jay Baruchel also in Blackberry. That is a really good list of movies to watch. So, Trace Pierce, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being a part of this grand experiment on Dragon Movie Guy. Thank you for coming on, and I will say goodbye to everyone watching, and we'll see you next time. See you, everybody. Thank you.